Yeah, Harshil, good to see
Hey
you.
Rohit,
किधर है
very
तू?
very
अभी
good to see you.
होटल?
Rhode Island के hotels, yeah, one of the Arbit hotels. We went out to enjoy the fall color over here.
Good, good. So weekend trip.
Very much so, very much so. I think we are probably going to get another 3-4 weeks of good weather before winter fully kicks in. So trying to make the most of it before we lock down for the
It's
next
good.
four
At
five
least you
months.
guys are roaming around. यहाँ पे तो सब बंद है. मतलब बंद मतलब for work people are moving out, but otherwise things are
Yeah, yeah.
locked down.
No,
So
no, I mean, in some ways, spirit-wise, that's very much the case over here also. लेकिन हाँ मतलब at least we can go, we are able to थोड़ा बहुत यहाँ वहाँ get out, so वो सही है.
चलो सही है सही है. So the reason for today's meeting तुझे दिख रहा है पीछे पीछे दिख रहा है book है. I mean the book by you.
Thank you both. Thank you very much, Rohit, for putting that book up. सही है.
Yes, yes. So that is the reason I thought I'll catch up with you. Maybe you know more about the book. But more than that, some more chat we'll have before that. So basically,
You're the first person to have expressed so much interest in knowing or talking about the book. So have,
in fact, it was a surprise to me also when you sent it. So then I thought, चलो देख लेते हैं और थोड़ा जान लेते हैं.
ठीक है.
पहले before we come to the book, एक interesting point ये ठीक है, we have known each other since 1998. That's like quite long. You've always been an Australian fan, right? A passionate Australian fan. That's how we have known.
हम्म.
And everyone, I think कोई भी कॉलेज में पूछेगा तो and तू अकेला रहता था जो even India Australia series you remember right the I mean historic win that we had
Right.
Indian country.
2001.
Yeah तो तू अकेला था और
Yeah, yeah.
कॉलेज था and
हाँ हाँ.
अभी भी याद है कि everyone figured out कि हर्षिल कहाँ है जब we won the match. So now everyone knows you. But the funny part is, suddenly, I think 2015 World Cup, all of us friends realized that now Harshil is supporting New Zealand, not Australia anymore, right? So
हाँ
क्या
हाँ.
हो गया? What happened to Australia team या क्या ऐसा New Zealand में हो गया that shift of loyalty?
I think that probably happened some time ago. So, firstly, I wouldn't say that I'm completely off Australia. I mean, I still deeply care about Australia, and I think somewhere or the other, वो मेरे दिमाग में हमेशा होता है कि like that's a team I've supported all these years. So I very much care about Australia even now. Lekin, I think a couple of things happened. One, the way they were playing, and maybe I was initially mistaken. I don't think they were any different under Steve O as well when I used to watch them and admire them. But I think probably from Steve O to Ponting to Clark, I think gradually their behavior got worse and worse. And I didn't realize it earlier, but then it was a lot more noticeable. And I think one of the biggest events was the death of Phil Hughes, Boche. I don't know if you remember that when Phil Hughes died.
Correct.
I think it was just a 2015 के time पे वो time पे हुआ था और काफी interesting था to look at the reaction. I mean, Australia was definitely in mourning. Clark and everybody they did really well to give comfort to the Australian people and everything. Lekin the interesting part was how the teams reacted after the whole incident happened and when they came on the ground. And Australia actually played India first. I don't know if you remember, India and Australia, our test match got delayed. And then Kohli scored like 4 centuries, all that, starting with Adelaide. लेकिन ऑस्ट्रेलिया वाज स्टिल दैट ओल्ड बेलिग्रेंट सेल्फ लाइक ऐसा लगा नहीं कि ह्यूज के डेथ के बाद they had got a different perspective to how they should be playing the game. And in fact, if you now look at it, Sandpaper Gate, who are 2018, mein, all of that. So I think their behavior was a little bit more abrasive. And amazingly, when Phil Hughes died, that was when Australia was playing, there was another test match being played. That was New Zealand, Pakistan. I believe it was Pakistan. And in that particular match, Brendan McCullum was the captain. And I was following New Zealand anyway because I loved Kane Williamson. I was looking at him since 2011, 2012. Lekin the New Zealand team, when they got to the ground for the first morning, they actually took few wickets. But the New Zealand team did not celebrate any of the wickets at all. They actually led the way to show the rest of the world how to deal with this. End of the day, it's just a sport. फर्क नहीं पड़ता. एक बंदा अपना colleague मर गया है. And it was really amazing to see how Brendan McCullum played, and he reacted to it. And eventually, after that, you could see that unki philosophy itself also changed to some degree. The way they were playing, and they became a lot more open and carefree. I mean, McCullum started doing that a little bit earlier also. So anyway, for me, it was a little bit gradual, but that Phil Yuska death was a inflection point. It was very clear that these two teams play very differently, and it just appealed to me the way New Zealand played the game as against Australia. Like, and as I said, I mean, Australia is also very near and dear to me.
So to बोल रहा है कि it was more about the human aspect than the talent or grit of the typical Australian players that they displayed over the years.
Yeah, I think so. I think from a skill point of view, Australia is still phenomenal. I mean, of course, there are areas where they're probably not as competitive as they were before. Like, the people are really skillful. And the players are fantastic. And maybe abhi ki team thodi better hai under Team Payne.
Sorry?
No, I was just saying that the current team under Team Payne is probably a little bit better in the way they are behaving, but a lot of it is also reaction to the sandpaper gate and unko kitna backlash mila tha.
Correct.
Whereas, and not to say that when New Zealand doodh ke dhule hue, I mean, everybody has sketchy past, and there have been New Zealand players also, who have had some misdemeanors in the past.
After Fleming, I mean, New Zealand has overall been same culture-wise and philosophy.
Culture very similar, which is true. I think Fleming said that
over the years. Maybe as you said, you didn't manage to pick that up while you were supporting Australia. और जो तू बोल रहा है वो भी सही है. Under Stew, I mean, Ponting or Clark, the team was very different than maybe what it is today. At least from my side of view, where I don't typically follow players like you follow each and maybe. I think you would be the only one who would love George Bailey the way you like him.
No. He's a good fan following. I think mostly in Australia, but no, he's pretty popular.
So I'm saying world over, yeah. Typically, team में काफी Australia में transition हुआ. But if you ask me, maybe from my point of view, New Zealand has always been the kind of team, the ideology bolo, philosophy bolo, I mean sportsman spirit bolo. They have been known for that. And I think maybe so. Another question is, तो अभी कोई chance है दोनों को equally support करना कि अभी very clear that New Zealand.
I mean, for now, it's New Zealand. I think one of the things I've realized, Bocha, is key to not take any hard sides here or there, right? Because you end up regretting down the line. Like, just in the some of the old series, I ended up supporting Australia, and now I look back and then I wish I'd supported the other team. Or actually, now I support the other team when I go back and watch those series. Same thing if you recollect, right? How much I was against India. In many of the series, and I don't think that's a great perspective to have. So now it doesn't really matter. I think I enjoy good cricket. I mean, there are a couple of teams that you do enjoy following. So try not to take a stand against any team if possible.
So largely, if you remember, 2015 जो अपना trip था World Cup वाला, was it inspired largely because New Zealand में है, New Zealand को देखना मिलेगा live, it was about World Cup देखना?
No, it was actually about two things. It's about New Zealand जा रहे और दूसरी बात दोस्तों के साथ जा रहे. So the fact that we were going, and it
not
happened
like
to be in that.
It only happened after you booked the tickets. तो दोस्तों के साथ जा रहे
So somewhere there was a hope that I'll be able to go with friends. The point is, we had gone in 2010 Football World Cup. Me, Gaurav. So the idea was that we had gone to see one big final. We had seen it with friends. That was a very enjoyable experience to another country for the first time.
Right.
So in some ways, this was repeating, right? Just at a much bigger group, at a grander scale, three finals across two countries, and traveling all that.
We managed to pull it off, especially you and Sandy. I mean, putting in all the efforts. We just tagging along. I mean,
that was perfect. I mean, you don't need everybody to plan.
So other than friends, what was the reason? New Zealand, Australia, or what?
Definitely, I mean, both Australia and New Zealand, it didn't really matter because I was visiting Australia for the first time as well. I'd never seen Australia. So I had to actually eventually go there and see it for myself.
We had been strong critics for you supporting Australia without seeing Australia and visiting it for so many years.
Very. I was very excited to see Australia as well as New Zealand, of course. But having seen both the countries now, I mean, Of course, there is a lot Australia to offer, and I wish. I mean, if I have to go back, I'll probably go back to Tasmania once again.
Hmm.
Again, George Billy's from Tasmania. लेकिन वो फंडू है छोटा island है. लेकिन but I think New Zealand has a lot more to offer. I really love New Zealand between the two countries.
So
It's
2015 में, what did you like? I mean, the MCGM or the match we saw in Auckland?
I think Auckland match was phenomenal. I think maybe it was because that was the first semi-final that we saw.
Yeah.
And maybe the match, again, that match is one of probably what the three or top five biggest World Cup games. It was a phenomenal game.
I think the
So it's
contest
very
between Dale Steyn and McCallum, which we happened to go and see from the bowlers kind of end. You remember, like, we didn't have seats there, but अपन गए थे
right. Yeah,
initial.
we went around.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it was amazing. I
just
mean,
हाँ,
I still remember. I mean, अभी भी
yeah.
those memories. And I think Auckland का काफी cozy atmosphere था. I mean, it makes you feel more involved in the game. Then the MCG is too overwhelming. ऐसा मेरा personal था. So what are your thoughts? I mean, MCGM के बारे में.
Yeah, that's probably true. So Auckland is what Eden Park, right? And Eden Park, I mean, it is huge, but I mean, MCG is massive, right? So MCG is like looking at 100,000 people. It's almost two or three times the size of Eden Park. I think Eden Park definitely felt a lot more intimate. We felt part of the action, especially when New Zealand was trying to chase down the target. I think with MCG, you still feel a little bit distant or apart because it's just so massive, right? And as a beginning, I think अपने पास इतने fun seats there. I think you guys probably still had better seats, but I know I was so far off that I was trying to take a photo and I can capture everything into it. I mean, it's so massive.
Plus, what was the dampener for our MCG finals? Well, obviously, I mean, not for you maybe, but for we Indians, we lost the semis, we came into the finals, and वो match भी बहुत one-sided था. And it took away kind of the whole excitement for us to travel from India to watch. I mean, a match which should be like a proper cricket match. So I think that took away the whole. I mean, what we have heard about
True.
all these years. Maybe we have to go again.
वो तो maybe true.
Good cricket.
It wasn't a great final by any means. I mean, that actually tells you, right, to have a competitive final. एक तो it's not that often in World Cup में इतने competitive finals हुए. And when they do occur, they mean a lot. That's why 2019 turned out to be so impressive for so many other people, right? क्योंकि सबको इतना मजा आया. लेकिन 2015 was a little bit of a dud. हाँ, तो देखिएगा इसको भी मैच के बारे में ज़्यादा याद नहीं है. Maybe पहला when Stark got McCallum out, उसके बाद everything is a blur and it was maybe a little bit downhill. Lekin, that's true. I mean, we wish we had a more competitive game because New Zealand played pretty well. They actually defeated Australia in the first round. It was a nail-biting match, काफी fun, low-scoring game. And I was kind of hoping that they would have given a tough fight. I think MCG was too huge. Maybe the occasion was too big for them. Yeah.
So good. So क्या फिर बाद में ऐसा था क्या 2015 then again try to repeat 2019 and that was the idea of 2019 World Cup?
So for me, 2019 was actually never on the radar because I know a bunch of you and some of the other friends were talking about going for 2019. I did not register for 2019. I ended up going with my family to South America. तो मेरा कभी कोई plan ही नहीं था. I never registered for tickets as well. So for me, this was very much a last minute decision. And that was actually a little bit surprising. All of you, and not you, but a lot of other people had actually planned, including Sushant, they had all got tickets as well, which they had to sell back. So in some ways, I was hoping there'll be other people, like nobody showed up, and then I ended up taking a last minute trip over there.
But then decision कहाँ था जब New Zealand beat India or when? I mean, or what was the exact time or point you decided कि अभी ये finals देखना है?
Second semi-final, India New Zealand. So I think it was maybe Wednesday or something like that. I can't remember, Tuesday or Wednesday. Lekin client side पे था. I saw the match. It actually was split across 2 days, right?
Yeah.
India New Zealand का semi-final. So second semi-final, I mean, I wasn't expecting, but I was blown over with the match ka outcome. And then I'm like, this is amazing. Like they can get really close over there. So then, of course, I first called up Neha, my wife, and told her And we had discussed initially when New Zealand like won initial first 4-5 matches, and they were looking really good. I was thinking if I should probably go over there, but anyway, they lost a couple of matches, and I'm like, you know what, it's not even worth it. So let's
I
forget it.
think India
Lekin
would
after
be
that,
right there to reach the finals and take the cup. I mean, that's how it.
exactly. India was heavily favored, and that matchup didn't work out. So then I'm like, you know what, we'll worry about it later. Like after New Zealand won that match, I'm like, wow, I should probably go there. This could be historic. They could end up winning. So I called Neha. She's like, yeah, maybe you should definitely think about this. And then I'm like, I should talk to somebody else. So then I actually called one of our common friends, Sushant Barve.
Uh,
Barve को मैंने phone किया, and I'm like, Barve, ऐसा situation है. मेरे को like, what should I do? Like, I want to go there, but tell me, does it sound crazy to? I didn't even have tickets,
Correct.
and I was going to book tickets both for the games as well as for flying over there as well, like same day. So anyway, he said, yeah, I should go for it. I think I just needed that validation. तो जो उसने मेरे को दे दिया कि ठीक है, it's probably okay to do that. And
I
then
can understand your call with Barve must have gone exactly like what you said, but I don't think Neha के साथ इतना simple रहा होगा कि तूने बोला कुछ तो तूने उसको point बोला होगा जहाँ पे convince तो करना पड़ा होगा कि ऐसा नहीं होगा I want to go and she's like yeah you should go. अकेले अकेले लंदन में यूके में.
नहीं, Neha actually she supports, she pushes me to go out in a lot of these cases. बोलेगी कि तू जा. So
I'm saying
it's actually
not that I'm saying you going alone and not asking her to join you.
हाँ वो है. I mean, she always wanted to visit London and she wanted to.
Because it was London,
So
exactly. That is the reason.
हाँ. And especially because it was London, कोई और location में तो फर्क नहीं पड़ता. But she knew that she couldn't come over, so she's like, yeah, if you can make it, go ahead.
Constraints, the work constraints. So,
And literally, and I went there for 2 days. I flew on Thursday night, so I was there for Friday, Saturday, Sunday, saw the game, and flew back Sunday night.
okay.
Actually, Monday morning. Yeah.
तो फिर ये टिकट का जुगाड़ कैसे किया? Tell us about that because I'm sure with England's in final, I mean to get tickets would have been not easy.
So I didn't have tickets when I decided to go there. And even after landing there, I didn't have tickets. So I just started messaging some of my friends if anybody knows who's going to resell. Even that didn't work out. So then I was a little desperate, and then going to Facebook, and then going to a bunch of these groups. And then eventually I got connected to like few other WhatsApp groups. And these are WhatsApp groups of mostly Asians, so Pakistanis, Indians, and Bangladeshis and all others. And they are all trying to resell because a lot of them, they all live in UK or England, and they had purchased tickets and they were looking to sell them off. There were tickets available, except that they were ridiculously expensive. But eventually, I think I found a decent deal. I mean, I still had to pay 4 figures to get the tickets, but
I think eventually worth it for what you ended up.
So I got the tickets Saturday afternoon, less than 24 hours before the final.
वो भी बता कितना time
So
match
Saturday afternoon, so less than 24 hours before the final. So yeah, I wasn't entirely sure if I'll be able to go. So my backup plan was, if nothing else works out, just go to the stadium in the morning and hope कि कहीं से कुछ तो जुगाड़ हो जाए, या फिर just बाहर से कहीं से experience करके वापस आ जाओ.
Yeah.
So I was actually prepared.
Catch up the match in the pub with the local fans.
Yeah, exactly. But there was a Pakistani guy who eventually I met, and I went down and tube over an hour or so, and then he actually sold it to me. But good guy, I'm glad he sold it to me.
Amazing. But लेकिन चलो ठीक है, one reason was you, coming down to watch New Zealand, right, in finals. And another part was the World Cup was in England. The finals was in Lords. England was playing, right? So then, obviously, again, as cricket fans, we have heard so much about Lords, and maybe your first trip to London, UK, or maybe even to Lords, right? तो फिर वो back of the mind था कि नहीं Lords भी देख रहा है, Lords भी जाने वाला है. Did it sink in, or you were just like New Zealand finals?
No, I think it didn't sink in as much. I think it still on the surface was more about World Cup final and New Zealand. I'd never been to Lords before, and I didn't even check out Lords like the day before. I was actually at Wimbledon because Wimbledon was also going on at the same time.
Same time. Epic match going on.
Yeah. So day before I was on the grounds over there, but no, I'm like I'll check out Lords the day of the venue. I'd planned to go there early in the morning. As usual, I got delayed and I was late, and and it turned out to be a little bit of a crappy English weather. So it was a little rainy in the morning, for overcast tha. So I was late actually to the stadium. मेरे को 1.5 घंटा मिला. I mean, not a lot, but I was actually hoping to get to the stadium much earlier so that I could kind of capture the stadium and just get a feel of it and enjoy that atmosphere. But the weather just wasn't good enough.
But then just before the match, maybe you landed 24 hours before. तो वहाँ पे कैसे था? Like we have seen in India, I mean World Cup match, India finals, everyone is talking about it, maybe media. तो वहाँ पे कैसे था? I mean, did you feel it? I mean, not in the stadium obviously, but people around you talking to the people talking about it.
No, actually, I was pretty. I shouldn't say disappointed, but I was pretty surprised. Ki just didn't see that much of World Cup out there. It didn't seem as if there was talk. It didn't seem as if people really cared much about it. I mean, I think maybe when you go through the tubes, you do see some ads here or there, जो लगे हुए थे. But otherwise, unless you happen to go into that area or St. John's Wood wala, like it didn't even feel that a World Cup was going on. I think maybe the couple of places when you see the huge banners and all that, you get to realize it. But it wasn't as if the entire city is looking forward to the World Cup final. ऐसा लगा नहीं, but maybe I think it's just I mean, that's London, right? So there were a lot of other things also going on. In fact, F1 was also happening at the same weekend at Silverstone. And of course,
Okay.
you have the Wimbledon as well. So you can understand maybe,
Yeah,
a lot of different things for.
people in London have a lot of choice to, I mean,
Exactly. So
watch. Yeah.
you can forgive that.
Okay. But then एक जो famous, I would say, unique aspect about Lords जो सुना हुआ है, and वो 9 feet का slope from one end to other end, right? Did you manage to catch that?
Yeah. It's very noticeable actually. You go there to the ground and the first time you get a full view of the ground, you can immediately notice that the slope. So it's actually pretty
Visible.
it's very very visible, very obvious in the way you can perceive it.
In fact, the reason I asked you this because 2009 I happened to like visit UK. I happened to take tour of Lords. तो तभी दिमाग में ये था ये
I
सुना
remember,
है.
yeah.
हाँ तो तभी सुना था ये 9 feet and I was not very मतलब optimistic कि दिखने वाला है. But funny part as you said, when you go to that, closer to the ground, you can actually see the slope. And जो commentators हमेशा बोलते थे, he's bowling in the slope, and the ball is racing because
Right.
of the slope. And then you can say, हाँ मतलब ये impact होगा इसका 100%. So I think that was one, I mean, unique thing about Lords. And I happened to catch maybe one county match when I mean visited Lords. और तभी टूर में एक अच्छा ऑप्शन था लॉर्ड्स के. Like when the match is not going on, you get to see the players' dressing room and the media center, right?
Okay.
If match is not going on, but the funny part, the day we visited, match was going on, and unka, I mean, this is quite good. I mean, if match is going on, you don't get to definitely visit the, I mean, pavilion or dressing room or the media center because everything is going on. But they let you in the tour fee. They let you watch the match for free. So like,
Oh, that's pretty cool. So you get a full day's worth of entry as part
so
of the
yeah,
tour.
2009 anyway. I had no idea about this, so we had not kept like time to match देखने मिलेगा. तो other plans थे because we were visiting, sightseeing कर रहे थे. But then मैंने सोचा नहीं यार, लॉर्ड्स में तो मैच कभी तो देखना ही है, बकेट लिस्ट है. तो फिर मैं और डॉग बैठे, मैच देखा थोड़ा, and then I as a memento, I mean, purchased the scorecard of that match. तो वो एक अच्छा एक्सपीरियंस था. एंड आई थिंक अभी हम लोग गए थे, आई डोंट रिमेम्बर द डेट, बट दे हैड कंस्ट्रक्टेड दिस ह्यूज स्टैंड. एक नया स्टैंड बनाया था उन्होंने. तो बहुत प्रेटी, आई मीन यूजुअली आई थिंक लेवल्स नहीं थे अर्लियर. आई डोंट नो अभी तूने ऑब्जर्व किया क्या. तो एक नया स्टैंड बना विच हैड लाइक लेवल, सो यू आई मीन गेट अ बेटर व्यू फ्रॉम अ हाइट.
Okay.
So that was a nice experience. Unfortunately, I couldn't see the dressing room jahan we have the memories of Kapil Dev lifting the World Cup, right? Or Dada doing the famous shirt thing.
Right, right, right.
So other than this 9 feet और कुछ तुझे I mean unique कुछ देखा Lords में जो तुझे observe हुआ?
I mean, a couple of other things that came out was that's Unka Media Center, that spaceship.
Correct, correct, correct.
You can feel that was very striking. Um, and actually, I was very amazed with how open the access was to everything, right? So as soon as you enter the Lord Stadium and like a lot of people are just walking by, um, and you see people queuing up to get on top of that spaceship, which is the media center.
Yeah.
So I actually ended up seeing like a lot of journalists or a couple of folks whose podcast I listened to, they were there. You had like Ian Bishop and bunch of other like famous broadcasters and ex-cricketers. They were all just hanging around over there. You could go and tap and say hi to anybody that you wanted to. I was amazed. You could never imagine that this level of access to anybody, right? In fact, literally, I came in, the first person I saw was Michael Clark. He came by and I'm amazed. I'm seeing Michael Clark first thing in the morning, first person in the stadium. So I told him that Michael, and my wife, she's a big fan of Michael Clark, and I'm probably not as big a fan. But I had to take a selfie with him. So I asked him, actually, I told him that, listen, my wife really likes you, and do you mind if I take a selfie? So he was very kind. But no, I mean, I'm just walking by Owen Morgan. He's finishing his nets. He went by Ben Stokes. He finished his nets. He's walking by because there's a training ground over here, and then the stadium is on this side, and everybody passes through it. And so you have a bunch of people just queuing up. And he was literally a feet away from me. He's like signing the autograph of the kid next to me. I was just blown away that for a final game, you can be this close to the players who are actually going to go and play the match in literally 30 minutes from now, an hour from now. So that was pretty, yeah, impressive. I didn't expect that.
And what about fans? Fans क्या mix थे? कैसा था? I mean, support largely England.
Largely England, but there were few New Zealand fans who were pretty vocal about it also, or at least they tried to make sure that they were known or visible, though they're dressed up in New Zealand gear and black and all that. Yeah, but one of the things that was going around was there was a guy who was like selling New Zealand caps, sailor caps, and that represented like Kane Williamson. So yeah, they were doing few things just to mobilize the resources, but it was all very cordial. I think England and New Zealand fans, like they didn't really have any puff against each other. Both of them went along just fine, and everybody was very cordial. ऐसा कुछ लगा नहीं, like there was no tension in the air. ऐसा कुछ लगा ही नहीं कि like had this been India, Pakistan or something like that, like you can imagine a completely different mahal, or even England, Australia for that matter. But I think New Zealand being there, it's very hard to have that kind of
So
maybe antagonism towards it.
you're saying even with the finals, I mean England playing, the movement in the stadium was pretty decent for you to like access areas to whatever see around the stadium. So easy था वो, इतना कोई issue नहीं था moving around.
Absolutely. Yeah. I was actually, again, I mean, I had stands, my tickets was one of the Warner stand at the pretty top. Lekin I just went around and asked a couple of the security guards if they can just let me get closer to, because there were some interviews going on and Steve was actually over there. So I wanted to take some photographs, but they were all very nice and they let me in. तो अच्छा घुमा करा देखा. I pretty much did like 3-4 rounds of the stadium and made sure that I understood everything. I was interested about the architecture.
Because back home India, तुझे पता है, like for us to watch any match in the Indian stadium is so strict. Like we have to reach like so many hours before the match starts, and I don't think we get access to any other areas than the seat where we have, like the stands. So काफी restricted रहता है. And then if you are saying you get to like go around the entire stadium, like catch people in action, must be like pretty. I'm sure you must be surprised as well as like must have been great for you to watch, right?
Yeah, and people having a nice time. Like people are drinking, having their tea. So again, I'm walking around and I didn't realize it then, but there is like this coronation garden. It's a small little patch of garden, and people get together and they drink their tea and like it was just amazing to see how chilled out and relaxed the atmosphere was leading up to a final. It was all very relaxed. And it's actually very small. I mean, I ended up making like 4 or 5 rounds of it, just trying to figure out how things are. It's
And they were pretty okay.
very, very different experience.
And they were pretty okay also with allowing you phones, cameras, security checks, pretty decent, not bad.
Yeah, I think so. Because I was trying to get a tripod in. And I never ended up using it, but they did allow me to take it in. I think they were pretty relaxed about it.
Good, good. So inside the stadium, कैसा था कुछ? I mean, with full packed stadium, I mean, how was the atmosphere? जो रवि शास्त्री बोलता है electrifying or
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, it was fully packed, and everybody was getting into the mood of it. So you could see English fans were definitely more vocal. So you could hear the noise and just starting to warm up. Lekin, one of the things I do remember is like how tiny the seats were.
अच्छा,
It was like literally, so at least again, I was sitting in the Warner stand, but like literally had to, you squeeze yourself in, and you're surrounded by a bunch of people around you as well. And yeah, it's very different feel compared to again what you watch in India or someplace else. There's not a lot you can move around. Again, everybody's set in, and people do bring a lot of food and drinks, and
correct.
like they try to have a picnic as well. So that was one of the things I noticed, that I don't have a lot of room to move around like over here. So I was pretty much just cramped in this one location, and but no, I think the atmosphere was pretty good.
But
Very,
after
very
you
nice.
moved in the stadium, seat पे relax हो गया होगा. You happy with the view? I mean, क्या था? I mean, obviously.
Yeah, I think it was pretty decent view. I mean, again, I was initially maybe a little concerned. I got like a 45-degree angle. Um, so the good part was it wasn't completely side on, but then it wasn't fully behind the stumps as well. And sometimes we tend to enjoy that, right? Again, if you remember Wankhede and all that, like we like not stand there, ki, tum yahan se dekho, you get to enjoy the ball and the way ball moves and slope ka effect and all that.
Correct.
So again, it's difficult to see that from that 45-degree angle. Lekin, I think in hindsight, that angle was pretty good for me, especially when it came to taking photographs.
Okay.
Because if you're taking straight on, that view is not very different than what you might see in a television as well.
Very true.
Yeah, and it's also a two-dimensional view, because it really flattens the image. And if you were to take completely side on, it's also again very difficult to get what's going on, because all you see is the side angle. So I think in some ways, 45-degree ended up creating a more three-dimensional view, in the sense you could get a little bit of feel in terms of which way the players are moving on, off, this and that, and you got a good angle from the side as well. So I think it worked out. Not that I had much of a choice, but not a bad angle to work with.
One is the view is will keep you engaged in the match, right? जैसे बोलते हैं. But ठीक है, end of the day, as you were saying, big match, you end up anyway having good time. But लेकिन there was a 50-over match. Right? We are in the age of T20s, जहाँ पे अभी ऐसा है कि 50 overs is like 2,000-year-old kind of a match going on for a long time. किया क्या 50 or 100 overs? How did you manage to like? I'm sure every ball was not exciting. I mean, eventually it turned out to be towards the, I mean, what do you call it, end of the match. तो कैसे मतलब?
Yeah.
I mean, you were alone. Again, a big thing. तो क्या आजू-बाजू friends बनाए? क्या who were around you? New Zealand fans, England fans.
Mostly England fans, but there were a few New Zealand here or there. I think New Zealand, because they were in a very small group, they had all they were all sitting together behind me, so I couldn't really join them.
Okay.
Lekin, I wish I had more New Zealand support. I was pretty much the only guy.
Okay.
And I think the people around me a little bit thanda. Again, they're okay, because they were also like ones and twos, so they weren't also a big group.
Not in group.
So everybody's doing yeah. So it was all right. But I think once a match got going, everybody was vested into it, and time flew by. Like it didn't really matter. I think if you look at the match from outside, you can say probably there were parts of it which were very sluggish. TK, like it wasn't that exciting. But I think once you're in the stadium, you are that much more in tune with.
Yeah, you are obviously into it. Every ball is cheered. Yeah. So more than the TV audience.
Right.
But did you happen to discuss cricket with your people around you, or क्या मतलब हुआ ऐसे कुछ?
Yeah, I think eventually the guy next to me, he was a good guy. And so we did a little bit of chit chat. He was a English Brit local. And he used to point me a couple of times. So I used to take a lot of photos. And when you asked me the earlier question, "Ki, how did I pass my time?" I mean, I did take a bunch of photographs, but once in a while he'll tell me if I'm missing something, ki, wahan pe interesting action is going on, or he'll point something out to me.
Okay.
Um, and then eventually he realized that I'm a New Zealand supporter, he's an England supporter. So both of us, when a wicket will fall or something like that happen, like we'll say like, "Oh, sorry, mate, but
So ठीक है,
this is
so
what's
you were
going on."
not like pretty much alone, so कुछ तो था time pass. I mean,
Yeah, definitely chit chat, and you get smiles and everything, and you get to know who's supporting what, and it's nice. And I think once you start seeing foes and boundaries and wickets, the people are very happy to high five each other and make friends.
but एक सबसे बड़ा point रहता है, about, I mean, which stadium is like the amazing, I mean, in terms of crowd, fans. I mean, obviously we are biased. Indians would say Wankhede hai, Eden Gardens hai, and Wankhede is North Stadium
Hmm.
is known, obviously a lot of is written also about North Stand Wankhede ka. And so obviously Lord's big match finals कैसा था cheering? थोड़ा तुझे different लगा कि बहुत ही polished था, I mean subtle था, loud था, क्या था? I mean,
Yeah, the interesting part was after the match, the lot of reaction that I heard was they had never seen lodge like this.
okay.
People who've been visiting to lodge for all these years, like this was one of the rowdiest that
Oh,
lodge has been.
that way. Okay.
Um, from their point of view, but I didn't find that to be particularly odd or different at all. Which just probably tells you that the intensity at which they were operating is still not at the level at which you might find in Asian or subcontinent countries. I think even probably what we saw right in Australia.
Correct.
Um, तो उस हिसाब से I mean, crowd was there, and it's a relatively small stadium end of the day. So you can pack in that much voice and energy into it. It's not that difficult. लेकिन yeah, it wasn't the feel of what you might probably get in Eden Gardens or MCG, where like you have this massive booming voice and people are like
So,
chanting and
but
the
typically
voice
more
reverts and all
clapping,
that.
typically more clapping than, I mean people being vocal. कैसा था? था वो evident था?
I think they're definitely clapping and all that, but I think it's been more vocal. Yeah. You can definitely see, and as time went on and as beer went into the stomachs of English fans, they became more and more vocal. And
पर ये
yeah,
कैसे था? Support कैसा था? I remember very striking thing which we discussed also during 2015 अपना Eden Park में यहाँ पे New Zealand, that the support was amazing for both teams is what was really evident in New Zealand, right? Obviously crowds were enjoying to the best, amazing atmosphere. तो यहाँ पे one sided support था कि how was it? I mean,
I think still largely I would say 3/4 or maybe even 4/5. Definitely English support tha. Most of the people were. In fact, there were a lot of Asians also who were there in the stadium, and they were all supporting England, right? So other than hardcore Kiwi fans, you don't really have outsiders supporting him. But having said that, I think English fans were very respectful towards New Zealand as well. So
okay.
um, and that was also evident after the game as well. But I think all the way through, they got along pretty well. So they were appreciative. They cheered. They appreciated. They clapped when New Zealand did something well. From that point of view, they showed the etiquette that we would expect, English people to give.
अभी एक क्वेश्चन पूछूंगा अगेन इट गोज बैक टू व्हाट आई मीन वी डिड इन द ऑस्ट्रेलिया ईडन पार्क मैच मुझे याद है आई मीन वी स्ट्रगल्ड अ लॉट फॉर फूड गुड फूड फॉर 50 ओवर मैच आई मीन आई डोंट नो इफ यू
Uh,
happen to remember that. I think the only thing we complained about in that match was the food we had to eat, and I mean we were
right.
pretty pissed off. तो यहाँ पे कैसे था? I mean considering again you being veg.
uh, I mean, I think they had pretty good options actually at Lord's Stadium, and,
Oh, I
and
mean,
and there were a couple of Indian carts, so you could get good options. You could get samosas, and they actually had a lot more variety as well. Having said that, I ended up packing in my food, so
I was
I
going to
did.
ask you that. I mean, yeah, did they allow
Uh,
that?
They did. So I checked in before, and actually it's not uncommon for people to bring in their food. वहाँ पे मेरे को बाद में समझा. So just the night before, I got in my sandwiches, at protein bars, थोड़ा nuts, whatever. लेकिन I made sure that I had enough for the day. तो लेके गया था मैं वहाँ पे. Because the other thing I was very conscious of is कि not that it was about photographs, but I knew that there's still going to be queues, and I just didn't want to waste my time standing in queue to get something.
Correct.
And that was pretty evident afterwards also that there was just a lot of queues.
Good, good. So अभी और एक question, you witnessed like the best match, क्या लगा, मतलब सिंकिन हुआ, कब हुआ सिंकिन, right? Everyone world over, the people had gone crazy, and I mean, and you were right there.
I think it's very difficult to know the momentous occasion and the impact this was going to have across the world. Like I think at that point in time, you're probably just more invested in the result itself, right? Whichever team you were supporting. So, and you're just trying to process or deal with that. So for me, it was about like, how did this happen? And just trying to come to terms with it. Walking out of it, you do get a sense and just start listening to people and getting a little bit of feel. Actually ended up seeing few other ex-players after the game as well. But you got an idea that, you know what, this was a special game. I mean, how big it turned out, I mean, you don't have an idea until people react to it. And I went back and looked up social media and all that. Lekin, you did get a sense that this was a good game. This was a special game.
But start of the game, तू क्या expect कर रहा था? Good match, कि New Zealand should win. ऐसा तो expect नहीं किया होगा कि ये कुछ होने वाला है.
No, I mean, nobody expects this, right? And nobody would have hoped for that. No, I just wanted a good game. And of course, I went there for New Zealand to support and win. What I realized is, even leading up to it, is that there's a lot of good things about this England team that I liked, including the captain Morgan and Jofra Archer. I really love Jofra Archer. So he's one of my favorite players. So it was very hard.
I think the team was quite amazing balance.
Dislike.
Great talent, Butler. I mean, Stokes.
Fantastic players.
Amazing players. I mean, you can't. I mean, not like them when they play. I mean,
and then it's difficult to begrudge them because they did change the way cricket was played over the last 4 years. Like they truly took it on. So in some ways, I'm like, you know what? I'm happy whichever way it turns out. But of course, I was probably more like, 51. I shouldn't say 51. I mean, I was leaning more towards New Zealand. Once it got that much more closer and tight, I'm like, you know what? It's okay. If England wins, it's okay.
But Harshil, अभी तू तो stadium में था. I'm sure everyone was, as you said, into the match. Every ball, वो जो bat को लग के फोड़ गया. How did you react? I mean, till that time, New Zealand.
I think. So actually for a long time, I did not even realize कि bat को लगा. Because the angle that I was at, it just seemed as if the ball went by. So it didn't even strike me कि लगा. And though I was wearing the radio commentary का earpiece, it was just so chaotic and everybody was in frenzy. क्या हुआ क्या है? So I didn't even catch that in the commentary. So actually this is what happened. And the funny part is, after the match finished and I was just walking around, did everything, I ended up catching one of our common friends, Mandar Dandekar.
Oh, so, I didn't know this. He was there for this match.
He was at the stadium, yeah.
Amazing.
So we knew that both of us at the stadium. Again, Nimish told us, both of us, that we were going to be there. Lekin, I just messaged him, okay, dude, you want to catch up? So we caught up for dinner after the match. And then both of us were talking about it. And that's when he told me that it was such a big deflection and edge coming out of Stokes' bat. So I didn't even realize it then.
I think it's quite still debated, right? I mean, even then, maybe that was maybe the turning point, because until then, I mean, New Zealand had the match. I mean, there was no way. I mean, obviously, you can still say that they could, but that just got them back in the game, and everything changed in just one ball and that deflection.
Yeah. I mean, in hindsight, it does look that way, but I think the moment when so definitely New Zealand were at the top at that point in time, but I think the earlier over, I think it was when Trent bowled, when he caught that and he stepped on the rope and
Yeah,
that went for six.
yeah,
I think that was the moment I thought, you know what, this might go and slip out of New Zealand's hand.
yeah.
वो तभी मेरे को लगा तब
चेंज ऑफ
हाँ
स्टेट बोलते हैं वो वहां था, करेक्ट करेक्ट,
हाँ हाँ
जस्ट
because Trent Bolt is a phenomenal fielder.
या
He's a brilliant outfielder. He's one of the best ever. And for him to have made that mistake, and I'm like, dude, मतलब, this is not going the way this should be. तभी मेरे को लगा कि ठीक है, तो
But
they might struggle.
then the funny part is, I mean, the way this match turned out to be, I mean, though it had a result, right? But then everyone said it didn't have a result, right? So, तुझे क्या लगता है? अब तेरा क्या है? Who was the actual winner? Then? What do you say?
The winner is England. I mean, there is no two ways about it. I mean, the rules are very clear. Ultimately, it's a game, and games has to follow a set of rules, and the rules were known before. So there cannot be any ambiguity in terms of who the winner is. The construct of the match and the fact that it was two super overs and you might never see something like this again makes us believe that New Zealand was close enough. But there were so many occasions when like England could have just snuffed New Zealand out of the game,
Yeah.
or New Zealand could have lost it. I mean, there is nothing to say New Zealand was entitled to win this World Cup. Like New Zealand barely scraped in the top or the final four into the semi-finals, right? Based on that, I think Pakistan, they edged Pakistan.
But just to
But
I mean, know from the actual stadium, I mean, did they actually display the rule before the super over? I mean, were you aware of this rule when the match? I mean, even the super over
they,
time.
they, they did. So there were two big screens, and they flashed the entire rule set on both those screens. So you could actually read through it and know what's going to play out in terms of super over.
और किसी ने पढ़ा नहीं होगा, कौन expect कर रहा होगा कि super over भी?
No, definitely not. And this way, I don't remember reading this boundary count rule. I mean, it was embedded somewhere, but it's only when the commentators started talking about it is when you realized, you know what, this is how it's going to be decided. And then the moment you heard about boundary count, it was very obvious that there was no way New Zealand was going to win because New Zealand just didn't hit that many boundaries.
So, I mean, all this, I mean, brings us to actual reason why we are, I mean, like, talking is the reason that you see behind me is the book that you sent me. Amazing. I mean, totally surprised and mind blown, I would say. So, I mean, I think the outcome is for, I mean, of the book is because what we discussed, for some time now. So, the question is, book ka idea kab aaya? Photo book, was it pre-planned? Ki just like your trip, you just happened to उसके बारे में बता.
The idea came after the match.
Okay.
So when I ended up I just have a habit of taking photos. So I ended up taking all these photos, and then I came back and I started looking at those photographs. I was a little bit underwhelmed. I wasn't too happy with the photos I had taken.
Okay.
I was hoping that I'll probably get more sharper, better photographs. And I think, I mean, I got some good shots here and there. But on the whole, I was a little underwhelmed. And I'm like, I can't do much with it. I was hoping, that if I had some really good photographs, I could have probably created some sort of a story and put those photographs out there. But I'm like, no, I can't really do anything with it. And then I ended up spending some time, like, what can I do with it now that I have all these photographs?
Okay.
And when I went back and looked into my photographs, I mean, I had captured a lot of important moments of the match. Like, I was pretty much shooting and trying to capture every single ball if possible, either the action at the bowling end of the batsman. And I'm like, there's something I can do. And I'm like, okay, now at least I have the full story, or at least a lot of important moments across the story. Maybe I can try to put something together. And that's when I started thinking about this particular photo book. But it was all after the fact.
So it was basically after the match, right?
Yeah, I mean, if I'd known that, I mean, honestly, I would have done a much better job at taking photographs. I would have planned it better. In fact, I mean, none of this was thought through. I mean, I was looking into the way I ended up spending my time also, right? So I was just randomly going around the stadium and trying to soak in, and then spending time into the museum and the gift shop. I probably, if I'd known this, I would have spent a lot more time capturing people and the general the vibe and the spirit over there. even actually the entire lunch hour, ended up running into a couple of my friends, and I didn't take any photographs in the lunch hour. So again, I mean, honestly, if I was going to do this from scratch, I would have probably done it better, and I would have planned for it. I think I just discovered that
But
adventure piece photographs might be something better.
How did you manage to like catch the match live and also catch the or capture the moments in your camera? I mean, you did you end up watching a lot of match behind the camera or how was it?
Probably, yeah, yeah. But I think it's all right because I never felt very different or odd about it. Because you're still seeing the action very clearly.
Uh,
Just that sometimes your view is a little bit narrow. Your field of vision is limited. But I think it then does help you zero in on exactly what's going on as well. Sometimes when you're just watching a match, I mean, there are a lot of things going on. Over here, I was very much focused either on the bowler or the batsman. Um, I felt that it was pretty all right. I didn't feel any different, and maybe I'm just used to seeing things from from camera.
behind
But
the camera, right?
yeah,
But
yeah.
then, like, I mean, just to know, I mean, how many pictures or how many photographs like you managed to click?
Oh,
Raw, I mean, raw stuff that you have.
few thousand.
So
I don't know.
only of the match and the stadium, you're
Yeah,
saying.
yeah, 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 yeah. I, I mean, on a typical day, if I'm just traveling around, I'll take 1,500 to 2,000 photographs in a full day. But I think this was a match, and I had to take a lot more photographs. But definitely a few thousand photographs.
And did you carry any special camera or the lenses? How was it?
No, just I mean, again, because we're not allowed to carry anything special, so you can't carry those big zoom lens that sports
Okay.
photographers have.
Okay.
वो सब कुछ allowed नहीं था. So I just had a regular 200 millimeter lens. That's a maximum it could go up to.
Uh,
Which is pretty much what I used for most part of the match, or
you
a
carried
couple
like
of other.
DSLR, right? You had your DSLR.
No, I actually don't shoot DSLR. This was a mirrorless camera, Fuji. So again, very simple. It's a very small camera. It's not massive,
Is it
and
the
pretty
same
good lens.
that you had in the Lonavala trip we went?
It's of the same kind. So that was a fixed lens camera. You
Okay.
can't change the lens in that particular camera. That was Fuji X-T3. This was, sorry, that was Fuji X100. Uh,
Okay.
the one that I took was Fuji X-T3. So it's the same family, like in isme, you can change the lens. So I had a couple of lenses to work with, but I ended up
I
picking
remember like
a long telephoto lens.
we all were so amazed with the photographs that came out of that camera you had, like the chota camera. But I mean, I think some of the best
Yeah,
clips you could have that you have taken. I mean, that we still treasure, I'm sure.
Fuji high quality. I mean, the thing is that they're not massive resolution. It still only goes up to 16 megapixel, right? So it's going to be difficult if you have to crop it and blow it up on a billboard or something like that.
Hmm.
But on the whole, for regular use, it's a phenomenal camera. I mean, it's mirrorless, so it's a little bit lighter and easier to work with. But I really enjoyed this camera. Yeah.
But
But end of the day, it was just a 200 millimeter lens. So I wish I'd got a little bit more, that I could have got a little bit more closer to the action. But then it's always difficult. Like you're not going to get that. And then you need tripod and you need a bunch of other things to make it work. Especially if you want to blur out the background and everything. It's just not possible from the angle where I was at.
But the funny part is, I mean, you have managed to click like thousands of pictures, and you know, right? I mean, fans come to watch the match, enjoy the match, and they're not typically happy with people just standing and clicking pictures. And I'm sure you must have done it for the entire match. So, aju baju, kuch people just say like, "Oh, sit down," like, "Let us watch."
Yeah, good point. Yeah, so if you go back to what I told you before, right, that how the seats were all cramped and everything, and there is very little room to move around.
Yeah.
So almost all the photographs I've taken are only up until the ball was bowled or the batsman played the shot. Once the batsman played the shot, I couldn't get any more photographs because either people move
Yeah, or
or
they will get
I
up.
can't literally get up from my seat.
Correct,
But I
correct.
cannot get up from my seat because then I'm blocking somebody else. So it's
Exactly.
only when the bowler is bowling, everybody's just seated, and then I can just focus and take that particular shot.
No,
So
sir.
that's why if you look into my book, I don't have any fielding shots
Just
because
to
I didn't
understand this
shoot any.
mentality, तो तू बोल रहा है कि जब ये bowler bowl करता था, you used to get up and everyone used to sit. ऐसा था क्या?
No. Even I was seated. Everybody's seated, so I can get a clean view. Nobody's obstructing me.
Okay,
Uh,
okay. So even while sitting,
uh,
the view was not obstructed. You could take like
no,
proper shots.
uh,
Okay.
because I'm just focused on the pitch. Lekin after the batsman placed a shot, depending on where the ball is going, I may have to get up. I may need to move around, and that's not possible. So I didn't get a lot of shots of the fielding or the outfielder or catches and all of that stuff. Uh,
So overall, you were not
because
annoying. So looks like you were not annoying to the audience around you.
yeah, they wouldn't let me be. No, no. I mean, a couple of times they, I think it was right at the start that a couple of people tapped me, each other, just to make sure that I was not getting up when the bowler was bowling the ball. Lekin after that, there are no issues.
Good, because I mean the output has come out so well. I mean, doesn't look like you were part of the fans or the audience, but like
Yeah, no, actually I do think that so fielding was actually in that game. Fielding was phenomenal. I think that's probably very difficult to see on TV. Maybe it is, but I think both the teams in the ground fielding was fantastic. And I just wish I could have captured that a little bit better. I mean, it's difficult to capture fielding, but it doesn't come across in any of my photographs because I never got a chance to do it.
okay. And then just coming to the book, I mean, ये सब तो किया होगा तूने. I mean, obviously you ended up, I mean, capturing the amazing match that went on. But फिर नाम सोचने के लिए time गया कि you had something in mind right away when you were like editing or जो भी designing the book.
It didn't take too long for the name to come through. So this the name Field Full of Shades. It's from this poem, Franklin Thompson, and that's a very I've directly copied the name. Let's be very clear, right? So firstly, that poem it's actually the most famous poem in cricket. That line, "Oh my horn by my Barlow long ago," that's the most famous line in cricket poetry. So everybody knows that, or people who have read about it. And there have been a couple of cricket books based on Field Full of Shades. So they've taken that phrase, and I
Okay.
think one was in 60s, one was probably in 80s about something else, a
So,
different topic.
so other
But
than any alternate names you had in mind?
no, but I think for me this worked. So a couple of other books had used this name from this very poem. I just felt that this was apt for me. Also, partly I had known the context of this poem and this poet himself and what he had gone through and the context in which he wrote this poem. And I felt that it's a good thing. This is like almost moving 120 years forward from when he wrote this particular poem, and it's about coming to Lords. Lords is very different than how it was before, and I think end of the day it's all about shades, and you could see. I mean, you can take it literally, you can take it metaphorically, but I just thought that phrase worked for this book, given what I was trying to do. I stuck with it. I think once you find something good, don't need to mess around. Uske saath lage raho and that's it.
But you happen to like decide the name first or design the book first?
No, I think the book, designed the book first. I mean, name came a little bit after. So again, I think partly when I decided to whatever go for the look that I have for the book, I knew that I was going to play with different shades and the colors, right? I mean, you can see like greens and yellows and all of that.
Yeah.
So then all the more reason for me to go with this name, but definitely at the look of the book first. I even had my cover page identified first, and then I thought of the name.
But then coming to design, क्या सोचा? I mean, what thoughts went through when you decided कि अभी चलो book बनाना है, photo book बनाना है? So what went through your mind? I mean, because designing is not easy, right? You have to come down to some. I mean, you'd have something in mind which you have to bring out eventually.
Yeah, yeah.
So the process.
Yeah, so the starting point was, of course, to see if I can, if I have just good photographs that I can print. And my first thought was maybe I should do black and white or something like that. But
Okay.
then I was telling you before, I just wasn't happy with the photographs. So, and not that I wasn't too happy. I mean, definitely photos weren't as crisp and sharp as I would have liked them to be. Like, and secondly, given that all the photographs I took were from just one angle, right? It was very dull and monotonous to go through series of photographs, no matter how good they are, because they are all from the exact same angle.
Correct.
And then when you take a photograph and photograph has a lot of other things, right? So there is action going on, but then like you have those advertisements going on. There is crowd. So there are a lot of other elements in a photograph, and gradually started to realize that, you know what, some of that is distracting. So I wanted to then separate all those away from the action. So I'm like, you know what? Firstly, the photographs aren't good. Secondly, I probably want to tell the story a little bit differently. If at all, I have to put this down on paper and on a book. And then I realized that if I have to do it that way, the only option is to abstract it at some level. I can't show the photograph as is because it's just not interesting enough. I mean, 5 photographs might be interesting, 10 may be interesting, definitely not 100 photographs from that angle. So then I started playing around with the look. I'm like, okay, if I have to change the look and feel of it, what would it look like? And then there were like 50, 75 different options and filters I just started playing around with and see what may or may not work. And eventually I started to settle down on this particular look. And I thought it worked well. And I thought it could tell the action in terms of what the bowler or the batsman was doing at that point in time.
But
Like it was a little bit of a struggle.
I can understand because I mean that we also happen to discuss, right? I mean, one thing I found, I mean, unique, though obviously you said it happened to be challenge for you, was that this book gives you a perspective typically from how fan would view a match. Unlike we get to see the professional shots, close up with blurred, background. I mean, every batsman in action or bowler in action, the best you can see. But this has this, I mean, a purely feel of a fan point of view that comes out. But then again, as I said, as you said, it was challenge. But then is what point you thought, that in this book, you have to cover the entire match and not just the pictures from the match.
Yeah. So that's something I was trying to determine, like, what is it that I've worth telling about, right? And what's showing. Because ultimately it was what photographs. And I didn't have great one-off photographs. I mean, yeah, maybe here or there, some bowlers in action, some wickets I've taken, and they are fine. But again, as I told you, they're all from the same angle. So just putting 20 best photographs together wouldn't have worked because it wasn't telling anything new or different. In fact, to your point, right, sports photographers, they would have taken much better shots of those important moments, right,
Correct.
from where they were. So I wasn't adding anything new, different. This wasn't interesting at all. If I were to just put 20, 30 photographs from where I was positioned. I mean, a lot of people take photographs, videos, and that's not uncommon. So then I started thinking about, okay, if I have to do something about it, what can I do? And again, it goes back to the point that I told you before that I just had all these photographs with me. I pretty much shot the entire match except for the super overs. I'm like, maybe that's what I should do, which is try to see if I can tell that entire story end to end. Because end of the day, the match itself was so interesting, and the match itself took twists and turns. So it wasn't so much about one person here or there. I think the match itself became the centerpiece as against, yeah, as much as Stokes was important and a couple of other players did really good. I think that match was spoken about a lot more than anything else. And I'm like, you know what, maybe I should then just focus on the match.
But like while editing or preparing, did you try out just photograph kind of a format and maybe then you realize it's not looking great, so you moved on to making it into a story?
Yeah. So I did play around with that. I mean, I like shortlisted like top 300, top 100, top 50, and top 25, stuff like that. And I'm like, I just still wasn't happy about the way they were looking. I mean, I tried different things. I tried black and white. I tried different look and feel just with photograph itself. And I'm like, this is not working. Um, and maybe just because I'd shot all this, I'd already seen it from that particular angle, but I didn't like any of it. So I'm like, if I'd have to do something about it, I should try to cover as much as I can and try to tell the interaction. Actually, my first draft was a much shorter version, and which kind of picked the best 75, 80 photographs and put them in chronological order and try to tell that story end to end. But then I realized that if I'm going to tell that story, I should tell that story properly and try to fill in all the bits and pieces, not just the highlights of it. And so then it became what it became now, 200-page book.
So then another part was, I mean, which, I mean, obviously is adding a lot of vibrancy and colors to the book. But then I'm sure a lot of people, as you explained that, I mean, the idea behind using this filter or the look, or was it purely, you answered it, because of the photos from one angle, or you thought this looked also good with the various other filters that you
Yeah, so again, this is a combination of a lot of different filters. So this is not one filter. But having said that, I did think this look worked pretty well for cricket. So I mean, if you look at what cricket is about, right? I mean, it's all about end of the day, batsmen and bowlers bowling and playing particular shots. So it's really about the physical movement of the players. And so it's all about the shapes that are created when they're in the process of bowling or batting. And in this particular look, I'm capturing that shape pretty well.
were?
You get the intent of what is going on. You may not exactly know who the player is because a lot of the detail is just not visible, but you know what the movement is, either what the player is trying to do or what they were in the process of doing. And I thought that's probably the most important part, right? That if somebody's bowling or somebody's batting, the essence of it is end of the day, that person playing that particular shot or bowling. And it's nothing but a body positioned in a particular way, trying to do something about it. And I think this look captures that pretty well. So I felt very comfortable with this look. Um, and once I tested it out, I mean, I had a few different looks and tested it out on few images. And I thought this worked pretty well across the board.
And also, Harshil, I think everyone knows, whoever knows you well, that you have been, I mean, following art, you love art, creativity, you have been doing it yourself. So, you had any inspiration behind this look or anything where you had seen earlier?
Uh, Unfortunately, no, actually. I was trying to look for examples like this. I was actually trying to look for examples of two kinds. One, where a real life event itself has been presented a little bit differently, like not just straight up photographs. And I mean, there are a couple of examples here or there, but I didn't find anything close to what I was trying to do there. And the second example I was looking for is somebody was, or who had told a real life event with a combination of some graphical elements and some text. So not entirely a text story, textual story based on words, or not entirely a photographic story, but some combination of the two. And I couldn't find anything covering that. So eventually I had to come up with this by myself. I mean, end of the day, you always have influences of what you've seen and people that have inspired you in the past. That's always there. I mean, you can see inspiration from like comic book design. You see elements of that over here.
Yeah.
Some of the graphic design, some themes around painting, digital artwork. So it's there, but there was no direct inspiration to say that this is what I was trying to. I think the closest is probably a graphic novel. Uh, in terms of the way I was trying to tell my story. But I think eventually I moved away from that as well. And then you don't see, initially I had a lot more panels and the action was moving from one panel to the other and every page had 4 to 6 photographs and that was a lot more closer to a comic book style. But then I started to blow up the images and make it full spread or full bleed. And except for a couple of instances, not to have too many images on the same page. And of course, it increased the size of the book as well.
Yeah.
But I felt it needed that breathing room to take in each of the photograph and appreciate what was going on there.
So, I mean, I think we also discussed this, right? I mean, that I kind of told you that the text that you added, right? I mean, the one is the text and kind of, the story flowed with the text because it, I mean, kind of actually, I mean, your idea was to relive the match, right? I mean, and it eventually helped whoever read. I'm sure, I mean, you would have got feedback. At least from my point, it took me back to the match. And so again, coming back to it, what point you thought that one is obviously you can have text and you only write about the picture that is there on the page, and they can be not a continuous thing, that can be a discontinued kind of an flow. But you can still
Mm-hmm.
enjoy each photograph because of the description that you would have from your point of view, maybe not typically how the match goes. So what point you thought that it has to be a continuous way of also adding the scoreboard? Because I honestly felt that the scoreboard really brought in the continuity and made you go back to the match. and not the moments. Obviously,
Yeah,
moments are captured because I mean they are there. So where
right.
did you actually pin down? Okay, I have to put down score and I have to write few things about the that moment in the match.
Yeah. I really went back and forth whether I should have text at all or not, and
Okay,
I really initially resisted the idea of putting text in. And then once I decided to put text in, I'm like, okay, I should make that text interesting. In the sense, the intent was never to just give a description of what was going on, because firstly, um, I'm not too great at it. And secondly, I didn't think I was going to add much value there. So my initial idea was to actually get more reactions from the crowd, things I'd heard. I'd like jotted down a few things, was probably to actually even go to social media and look at general reaction of it. I was probably going to do some data analysis, bring some stats, and like I had a lot of different ideas and wanted to bring combination of all of that with visuals. Eventually, I had to throw all of that out because it was all distracting and taking focus away from again what the story was. And then I decided, okay, it probably still needed something to anchor on, and that's when I decided to add some text in some cases to at least introduce characters or players or emphasize certain actions. And then in specific pages, I decided to add the score as well as a tracker so that you kind of know where you are in the timeline of the match. It's a chase end of the day, right? And one team is trying to chase down another team. So it just helps you build that momentum and the sense of urgency as you get closer to it. And that's the reason I decided to add that score in. But I think that the text is still probably I'm little too unsure of if it truly adds value. In fact, one of the he's a ESPN Cricket Info journalist, but I ended up getting in touch with him, asked his feedback as well on this book, and he told me that, dude, you should take out text from this because end of the day, like text is going to limit the emotions that the reader is going to feel when they read that page. Because when you look at a photograph may jog a lot of different memories and emotions in you. I mean, it may make you think of going back to Australia. It may make you think back of maybe in Bombay or Wankhede or something like that.
correct.
And if I were to just put a very plain sentence to say Archer hits this for, or Stokes hits this for four, that's a very plain and bland interpretation of a page that could be a lot more powerful for the reader. And a photograph in itself can take you down a memory lane, which text cannot always do that. So I was very much going back and forth if I should have text or not. And I decided to keep it because I felt eventually down the line, there'll be enough people who may forget some of the details.
Very
So I decided to retain that in. But again, for the sake of curiosity, I ended up creating an alternate version of this book without any text. Okay. Only thing it has is the
pictures.
poem at the front. And I think it's come out pretty well, actually. I think that's a real, for people who are closer to uh, the action in terms of what happened that day. I think they probably don't need words. I think just looking at the
Yeah.
image is going to be a lot more powerful for them. But to your point, there are going to be a lot of other people down the line who may forget the details, and for them, this may probably help out. I think I was trying to balance it out. It's maybe not a great idea to do it one way or the other, but this is where I landed up.
But then coming to the text, I mean, and going into slight nitty gritty is any, I mean, did you like think through a lot of using the font? I mean, the style, how was it? I mean,
Yeah, I mean, definitely a couple of iterations just to figure out what's going to work. I mean, initially I had a completely different um, sort of typefaces through the book, and then I changed that. I mean, once I settled down. So now if you look into the book, there are three different things going on, right? There's one text commentary.
yeah,
Um, and then secondly, you have these blurbs or call outs for few stats or highlights or accomplishments of players.
yeah,
And then the third piece is the score itself.
or like, correct.
And yeah, so it's really a combination of those two, and I have to make sure that at least the fonts and the typefaces they go along with each other. So I took a very contrasting approach, right? So if you look at my commentary, it's all lower caps, right? And that distinguishes it from the blurbs and the scores, which is all in upper caps. And hopefully visually it gives a little bit of consistency to the way reader follows the action.
Yeah, I mean, so another is like, I mean, looking at the book, it looks like you've put in a lot of effort. It didn't, I mean, it's just like taking prints and, like putting it together. तो अभी तो normal you obviously have a normal job, right? तो ये कैसे manage कैसे किया? I mean, did you like while designing, you would do it only on the computer or then take prints and check how it's looking. Well, I'm sure it has a lot of effort going into it. Guess, I mean, how did you manage with your normal work day and about putting it together?
Yeah, that's why it took more than a year to get it out. Because I had to do it alongside my job. Yeah, I mean, definitely it took good amount of time and effort towards it. But yeah, I just had to plug in on the weekends and on the sides. Yeah, my wife probably wasn't too happy because a lot of weekends ended up staying at home and choosing not to go out because I had to spend time on the book. But I think it took me 3 months probably to get a first cut out, which was my first draft
Okay.
that had 80 pages in it. And that definitely established a backbone of what this book came to be. I mean, it's very similar to what this book is, though this is 220 plus pages, so it's a little bit more expanded. But having said that, I think that 3 months effort that I put in to get the first version out was very helpful. And then from there on, it was just iterating on it, both in terms of the look and feel. I wanted to add certain additional pieces in the story, so I added more pages along the way. And then the third thing I did was start to print them and actually look at it, right?
Correct.
So I went through 7 different proofs of this
Oh,
book. Yeah. And I mean, I was hoping by the third proof that this would be the final version, but I kept getting it. I would look at it and okay, there are a few things I'm not too happy with. I kept changing back. I kept adding pages, and I think it went from 80 to 120, and then it went down to like 275 pages, and then what brought it back to 220. So yeah, I moved around. I mean, usually one should edit and condense. Ended up expanding the size of my book, which probably wasn't.
but then like
Uh,
you're saying you put in 3 months. So 3 months was like after how much time the match got or the match was over immediately, or you took some time to just process it in your head first and then bring it out?
yeah, so the match was done what in July, middle of July. I think it took me a month just to look at the photographs and even figure out if there was anything in it. I probably didn't start doing anything until late August, and then yeah, September, October, couple of 2 to 3 months there. But it was really towards the end of 2019 that I had a recent first cut that I sent it out to a couple of people and just to get their reaction and read to it.
Yeah, but then like you only used to work on weekends or managed to put in some on like normal weekdays as well?
Mostly weekends, but I think occasionally if the work wasn't too bad on a weekday, I definitely did put in few hours here or there. So especially when I used to travel, right? For a good part, Monday to Thursday, I'm out. So after coming back to hotel, we're probably back by 7ish, and then I would put in 2 to 3 hours on a regular weekday, and then weekends would be good
So
10 to
it's
15
like good
hours.
old days of where you would start your second shift of doing stuff with data and like putting in long hours coming up with some stuff.
Something like that. Again, I think this took a lot more time, Pooche, than that also.
So like you were like disciplined this time, right? Put in hours every weekend.
Nay, nay,
Not
nay. I think I probably didn't plan it. I mean, so again, I'd never done anything like this before. So this is all you learn and you adapt and you try to fix it. But I think one thing in hindsight I should have done better was have a end date in mind,
okay.
and that would have made it easier for me to work backwards. But because I didn't have that in mind, I just ended up editing until I was happy. And I kept changing. And Neha is like, dude, you have to stop sometime. Like, you have to figure out when good is good. And I'm like, uh, she's like, you're at a point, nobody's going to care about this. I'm like, you're very, very true. But I want to make these few edits. I want to make few these edits. And then um, you just have to take
So
that time. But every time you do another edit, it's another month.
now you're saying so many, I mean, edits and versions. You, I mean, had like 7 prototypes or things like that. At any point you thought of giving up? It's not coming out, and it just took away your interest.
Probably not actually. No, no. I think that's why it probably made me believe that I should continue with this because every time I kept back, I mean, I had a lot of breaks, right? Like for 10 days, I wouldn't do anything for work or something like that. Or something I was in India for 3 weeks, I didn't do anything. Or 4 weeks, I didn't do anything. But every time I kept back, coming back at it, I felt that this is good. This is interesting. I should continue this.
So that,
Yeah, I pursued it. Yeah.
so that after you got your first, I mean, I would say, or out of seven, you managed to finalize one. Did you like do it on your own, or you happen to take feedbacks and then decide that okay, this is the one?
The first draft was entirely mine. And then of course, Neha, she's the one who's been constant all the way through. So I keep getting her feedback and read to it. And she's good because she's not a crazy cricket fan. So she can be very objective and just tell you what she feels about it. But when at the first draft, I just sent it to a couple of people, including Vatsa, and they shared some good, useful comments and their reactions to it. But since then, once I had that, I worked pretty much by myself until at the final version out.
So I mean, after you, I mean, decided this is the final one, maybe you distributed the copies. I mean, did you realize anything? नहीं यार ये एक change होना चाहिए था or something like that? Did it occur to you?
No, I think I'm pretty happy with the way it turned out. Because to your point, right? I mean, I just did so many rounds of edits that I've been exhausted with everything that I came up with. So a lot of these things, right? So for example, like even the bowlers and putting multiple bowlers in the same frame,
Correct.
like that was a very late decision. But once I did it, I'm like, you know what, I should do it. And then I picked like good
That
6 or
has
7
been
bowlers or
amazing.
Satpakia.
Really captures the action, of the, I mean, as you mentioned, right? It's not about the close up and, the detailing of, I mean, the zoom and all that. It's about the action.
Huh.
I think it has come out really well in terms of, bowler in his action. And obviously, as cricket fans, we remember bowlers with their action. We still visually have them, maybe not the face, but as we have this lot of these lockdown quizzes on action of bowlers, batsmen, and I think it captured
Right.
being there in that book. I mean, amazing. So then,
Yeah, I think so.
and another thing, I'm interested. I'm sure, like now that the book is out and so many people have seen it, read it. I mean, what feedback you have got? Positive, I would ask first. I mean,
I mean, firstly, I haven't really got the book out in any meaningful way, and I don't think even more than
whatever. I mean, reach that you had.
more than a handful of people have looked at it. But I think so far, very, very positive, right? I mean, honestly, people have really liked it.
I think I have
I
to,
think
Harshil, I have to interrupt here. Before that, I need to ask because you said Nia has been the constant support, and she's been there. I mean, tolerating you, I would say, with your, I mean, effort in the weekends. What was her reaction when you showed her was she aware of the every edits you did and the layout you changed?
Yeah.
So,
No.
what was her reaction when you said this is the final? Whether she was relieved largely because you have ended this, or I mean, what was the reaction?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think that was the most overwhelming reaction of relief. So I think the third or the fourth version was pretty close to what we're looking at in terms of the look and feel. And of course, every time I do a proof, I give a copy to her, I give her a pen, and I tell her that put your feedback on, like document whatever you think it is, or write it or mark it or circulate whatever it is so that I can look into it. So she did that. And after a point, she's like, yeah, this is the same thing. Like, what's changing? How is this different than the last time around? I'm like, no, these few things are different. So it got to the point where like, she wasn't noticing much. And she's like, this is done. When are you getting it out? Like, when are you calling it done? So I think eventually when I told her that this is the final version, she was like, yeah, this looks good.
And what was her reaction? I mean, as a feedback?
She had already given the feedback in terms of the look and feel much earlier itself. In terms of her feedback trickled in all the way through.
Feedback on the layout, but overall the output, I'm saying, what you...
The output, she was very happy with. She really liked the quality of the book and the texture, the weight of it. Because again, those were the things we were debating, how it should and should not. And that also evolved since the first version. So now the colors are much better reproduced. So she really liked the final output of it compared to what was...
Great. And now you two would have a lot more time to spend weekends after the book is, done.
I have to catch up and I have to make up for all the lost weekends. I think this is where COVID did help me a little bit. The final 3 months after March that I was able to put it in. it did make it a little bit more easier because we were all in lockdown and I was able
And
to
what
give the
about
time and
others,
effort.
like the people you sent the book? How were their reactions, feedback?
Um, Generally very positive. Everybody has liked it. I think probably the common theme is what you were referencing to, that it did bring them back to that match and made them relive that match. Um, but yeah, people were actually surprised. I don't think most of the people were expecting something like this, and people were surprised that they just came about from me. And a couple of them thought that this was like a published version or an official version, and that's certainly not the case. And I shared with a couple of my cousins as well, who are very much into cricket, and they play cricket at club level in Bombay and all that. And they all really enjoy it, and they appreciated it.
And then coming to like obviously positive reactions, any critical feedback or
No, actually, unfortunately, no. I wish I'd got a little bit more critical feedback or specific feedback. No, I think whatever feedback had to come, it happened initially when I was reaching out to me and a couple of other people. And I think the constant feedback, even when I showed earlier, it's like, are you sure you don't want to show the details of like a lot of the
correct?
faces and this and that and some of that? And I'm like, listen, partly it's a choice and partly it's a constraint. So in that case, it probably made sense. But I think that was the overwhelming point, that are you sure you want to abstract it? I just don't think people had seen these kind of images before. And they're like, what if I don't know who that player is? I'm like, it's okay if you don't know who that player is.
Correct.
It's fine. Uh,
Okay,
yeah,
so overall you're saying like it has been positive, and
yeah.
I'm sure it will make you do like another photo book of similar kind with the reviews and feedback that you have, right? Or are you already up with another one?
No, nothing right now. No photo book. I haven't even attended anything interesting or major since then. But having said that, no, I think the pure idea of putting something together was interesting. So I wouldn't mind doing it again in the future, if I find the right thing. I mean, see, end of the day, this came about only because of the match as well, right? Like, if the match wasn't this interesting or
Correct.
wasn't talked about, I wouldn't definitely have put this effort into it. It had very little to do with my photographs. It had more to do with the fact that the match turned out to be what it is, right? And it's a special match. So
So,
then I'm like, it's worth putting my bit into it.
so any special plans or future plans for this book that you have in mind to make it out? I mean, or like to let it reach out to larger audience? Anything you have in mind?
I mean, I've tried everything. I think I should get some tips from you. I mean, of course, I need to put it up on a little bit more on social media and push it along from some of my accounts. But yeah, I think I just need to get it out there. One of the things I've done is I've also created a video of this. So again, given that it's a physical book and it's not possible for me, I mean, I'm not selling it. It's not possible for me to distribute it. It's extremely expensive to ship it as well
Correct.
outside of US. So it was going to be difficult for a lot of people to experience this if they're interested into it. So what I thought of is making a video. So I
Hmm.
do have a video. It's on YouTube. It's like a 30-minute video. I'll share the link with you. Check it out. But all it does is gives a snapshot of this book and takes you through all the photographs.
But no
Yeah.
plans of trying to find a publisher, get it published. Because honestly, I also told you this that this may more come out as a collector's kind of a, I mean, like memento you call or whatever, souvenir. And
Uh-huh.
any feedback you got on that front from people? I mean,
I mean, definitely people told me that I should reach out to a publisher or I should talk to somebody. This ought to be published. A couple of my friends and cousins also told me that. I think, I mean, I definitely do intend to send it to, there is one publisher I've already sent it to in UK. And there are a couple more that I'm going to send it to. I mean, these are the publishers who typically publish cricket books. So I'm just looking up their website, taking addresses, and it's literally cold calling. There are a few people in the cricket media fraternity that I've reached out to and asked them to have a look into the book. If they're interested, I've offered them to share this book with them as well. There are a few really good cricket photographers that I follow, and they do some good work. So I plan to send it to a few people in the field and see if they're interested in it and if there is any sort of reaction I can get on it. But on the whole, otherwise, I'm just going to go to like Reddit and Twitter and all the standard social media, get out there. I'll probably have a PDF version. I'll get it across on WhatsApp, and if you guys can circulate. But no, I think on the whole, I probably missed the publishing window, if at all there was a chance, right? I should have done it around the first anniversary window, um, which which probably would have required me to finish this book at the start of the year, get it out to the publishers well in advance to see if they're interested in it, and give enough time to get it out there, even if that was a remote possibility. But I think now I've missed that window, and it's not very difficult to go back. I mean, this event is well in the past, so it's unlikely that there's going to be any interest to publish anything like this. But having said that, to your point, right, it's a good collector's item. I do want to keep it out there. I mean, I have a few copies with me, and I do want to send it to MCC and Lords as well. So a couple of bodies, organizations, and yeah, I mean, down the line, if anybody is interested, I can always print more. But I think so far it may have run its course by now.
Great, great, Harshil. We hope. I mean, honestly, I hope that when some of us get to visit Lord, maybe the book is there, for people to buy. I mean, as a collector's item for the greatest, I would say the greatest match World Cup finals ever witnessed, at least till date. And
Yeah,
I'm sure, we hope to see this and published properly. And I mean, not many fans enjoy this, not just the close friends that you managed to send this copy. And I'm sure, I would have loved, obviously, you have sent us this wonderful, the bookmark that you have made. But one thing I would say, maybe once we meet again, I would like to have a signed copy, because not sure how long I'll be able to preserve this because it's not part
yeah,
of the
yeah.
book. Next time we meet, obviously, I'm getting a autographed copy from you with the copy I have. And I wish you all the best and hope to see few more books coming out from your end. And you, knowing you, I'm very sure you'll end up catching such momentous moments and matches and events. So I'm not very, I'm sure it would have a lot more events in your kitty, to come out with such books. So we are hopeful and definitely looking forward. And and one question I would say from our dear friend, because I think you have fallen for the trap. I would say that your own book would do that to you, is that Gaurav is asking now, when is the 2015 World Cup photos are coming out?
Yeah, yeah, that's and honestly, when I was creating this book for a year, that thought was at the back of my mind all the way through, right? That dude, I was there at 2015. So
Yeah,
2015, two things. One, in 2015, I didn't even have a zoom lens or anything like that. So the
correct,
camera actually I took in 2015 was very similar to the one that we saw in Lonavala, right? So it just
correct.
had a fixed lens, and that is just not good enough to take these kind of photographs. But unfortunately, even those photographs that I took, I lost actually, I shouldn't say lost. My server crashed and I lost a bunch of data, and these photographs were also part of that. So I've actually lost all my 2015. I don't have any photographs from Australia, New Zealand.
Wow,
None whatsoever.
that's really, I don't know how if Gaurav is going to buy that, but I'm sure every time you will see this book or he'll see this book, he's going to ask you this question, for eternity for sure. So you'll have to live
I,
with that.
I Yeah, no, I think so. So here's the thing. I don't think I'll be able to make it up to Gaurav for 2015, but I may be able to make it up to him for something else. So let me work on that. But
So amazing. So this is something that we all can look forward to, and so maybe a surprise for Gaurav
maybe,
there in pipeline. Amazing, amazing. Great, great.
maybe,
Kaushal,
maybe,
thanks.
maybe.
Thanks for joining and sharing your thoughts about this wonderful book. And I'm waiting for you to come to India and get a signed copy. Okay.
Appreciate this, Boche. I think you're the first one who have shown so much interest in talking about the book. So I think that itself
Yeah.
is
Really,
commendable. And
totally mind blown.
no, and the fact that you liked it, that itself means a lot. Yeah, I know how much of an artist you yourself are, how much you have appreciation of what's good, what's not, what looks good, what does not. So when you say some of these things, it definitely makes me feel pretty good about it. And हाँ मतलब देखते आगे क्या होता है, लेकिन I do intend to do something around this going forward, अगर हो सके तो, अगर और मौका मिले तो.
Great, great, Harshit. Thanks a lot. And hope you have a great weekend now that the book is over.
Absolutely. A lot more free time on weekends to go around. So I've started to think about what the next topic could be or next story could be, but haven't found anything yet. So still have my weekends to myself to enjoy.
Okay, then bye, Harshil. See ya. Hope to see you soon in India.
Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot.
Bye.
Absolutely appreciate this conversation, Rohit. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.